Today we're going to start describing the working principles of one of Modern Warship's most important mechanics, the newly updated spotting system. It consists of a number of different components, and in this episode of how it works, we're going to touch upon how ships spot each other, the difference between visibility range and viewing range, stealth and threat indicators, and finally you will learn how her chain can fire at CN Type 96 while remaining unspotted. Let's take a look at the minimap. The first thing you'll notice is that the minimap now consists of a map with coordinates, and several circles are now displayed around your ship. There are 4 circles and they represent underwater, surface and area of visibility of your ship, as well as minimum exposure distance. Sounds a bit confusing, right? Don't worry, it's actually easier than it sounds. Now this is a bit more understandable, isn't it? The white circle represents the range at which your ship will be spotted by an enemy ship. The green circle represents the range at which your ship will be spotted by enemy aircraft. The blue circle represents the range at which your ship will be spotted by submerged submarines or enemy aircraft with sonar such as P-8A. Last but not least, the grey circle represents the minimum exposure distance. We'll talk about that later. Your ship is invisible to any opponents until at least one of them passes within your visibility range. The indicator which will be displayed on your screen whenever the enemy see you will notify you about this, displaying who exactly has detected you. A ship, aircraft or an opponent within your minimal exposure distance, while accompanied by a specific sound. On ships, submarines, and aircraft. As soon as the enemy leaves your visibility range, or after you put enough distance between you, your ships become invisible to them after 3 to 5 seconds. Note that the time you remain detected depends on the Recon Data parameter and is usually 3 to 5 seconds for ships and about 10 seconds for aircraft. Note that only fighters have 10 seconds of Recon Data, all other types of aircraft get no more than 8 seconds. The base visibility range directly depends on the size of your ship. Let's replace one battleship Huanqing with frigate Chongnam. The frigate surface visibility range is 3.2 km. The distance between the ships is 6.5 km. But while Chongnam will spot Huanqing at this distance, the battleship will need to approach within 3.2 km to see the frigate. Note that currently you can only spot enemy ship when within her visibility range. The question here is, what part of the ship needs to be appear in the enemy visibility range for the ship to be spotted? The answer to that is either bow or stern. Can you spot a ship hiding behind an island? Sure, in Modern Warships there's a 1 km minimum exposure distance. With this distance between the visibility points on your ship, you'll be able to see each other regardless of any obstacles between you. In that case, the indicator will look like this. However, there is often situations in the game where you might be out of enemy ship's visibility range, but you can still see her. This means that the ship has been spotted by one of your allies who is passing the information about her to your team. That's how allied spotting works. When an enemy ship is spotted by your ally, her icon appears on the minimap, but you won't always see her in the binoculars. The thing is that every ship has a viewing range. The grey sector on the minimap shows the viewing angle of your camera in the game. Its furthest border represents the end of your viewing range. Under no circumstances will you ever see any ships located beyond that border. The viewing range is a value assigned individually to every ship in the game. In certain situations, viewing range can be very important. For example, on the Storm map we have Huanqing and Chongnam in one team and CN Type 96 in the other. 10 km separate the battleship and the Chinese submarine. Now, CN Type 96 is visible to both Chongnam and Huanqing. But the most interesting part is that now Huanqing can fire at the Chinese submarine while remaining invisible, despite the fact that her visibility range increases sharply after the shot is made, plus movement penalties, because the viewing range of CN Type 96 is 9.4 km. When Huanqing fires a shell, its visibility increases by 30%. You can see the increase directly on the minimap. Therefore, after a shot, the Chinese battleship will be visible not from 6.6 km, but from 8.5 km. This is called fire penalty. Each weapon on your ship has its own penalty. You can see it in the characteristics of your armament. The penalty ranges from weapon type. For example, launching missiles or firing your primary armament will give you maximum penalty, while launching torpedoes will give you minimum penalty. If enemies don't detect you immediately after a shot, the radius will return to its initial value instantly. However, if an enemy detected you, the increased radius lasts for 15 seconds after the last shot. In this case, the Recon Data parameter is not taken into account. But there's a trick. If you leave the visibility zones of all nearby enemies or hide behind an island after shot, the 15 seconds penalty will be reset in 1 to 2 seconds. It would be natural for autocannons and AA shots to also increase your visibility, but currently there is a debate to either remove that penalty or give the player the ability to turn on and off the autocannons and AA systems. There is also a second type of penalty called movement penalty. It only applies after 25% threshold and increases at 60% mark and 90% mark, meaning the faster you move, the more penalty you get. Unlike ships, aircraft do not get this penalty. Besides that, two things are worth mentioning. First, penalties for moving and firing are cumulative. If you are moving and firing, your visibility is maximized. Second, firing penalty only takes into account the highest penalty of the armament, meaning that if you fire your primary armament as well as torpedoes, you will only get the penalty for the primary armament, since their penalty is far greater than the torpedoes penalty. Another way to decrease your visibility range is by hiding in a smoke screen. The area of a smoke screen acts like a very tall island. It doesn't matter how deep you hide in a smoke screen. It's important that your middle visibility point crosses the boundary of the smoke screen. At that moment, your visibility range is reduced to minimum exposure distance. However, the smoke screen won't stop you from seeing any enemies detected by your allies or detecting them by yourself, and, of course, firing at them. Firing changes everything again. The visibility range also increases after firing any armament within the smoke screen, except for autocannons and AA systems. The exact value depends on the penalty percentage in armament characteristics. The key difference here is that the penalty is calculated based on the visibility distance of the ship, while in smokescreen it calculates based on minimum exposure distance, which is equal to 1 km, meaning that you get the minimum possible penalty from firing within the smokescreen. It's worth mentioning that while you're inside the smokescreen, your aerial visibility is 0, and surface visibility becomes the same as the minimum exposure distance, 1 km. Note that your underwater visibility does not change. When firing any weapon inside the smokescreen, the aerial visibility does not increase, and movement penalty does not apply. However, if at least one part of your ship is sticking out of the smoke, you can be detected. If you use or enter a smokescreen within the 15-second period of the increased visibility range after firing your primary armament, the countdown will reset and you vanish in 1 to 2 seconds. Let's move on to aviation. Each air unit has its own indicators of surface, aerial and underwater visibility. However, only helicopters and some types of aircraft, such as the PSF-1 and CH-37 Viggen strike fighter, anti-submarine bombers, including P-1 Kawasaki and P-8A, and some other units can detect the submarine. In addition, as mentioned earlier, air units have a longer time of recon data, making them ideal for reconnaissance raids. If there are no obstacles or smokescreen between you and the enemy aircraft, you will be detected. As soon as you use a smokescreen, you will disappear in 2 seconds. Or the planes leave your area visibility zone, you'll vanish when the enemy recon data ends. In addition, any visibility is affected by stealth parameter. This means that if your stealth is 5%, in battle, any of your visibility will be reduced by 5%, except for minimum exposure distance. Another thing that has been changed with the new update is a threat indicator. There are 3 types of threat indicator. Yellow means that the enemy is aiming his guided munition at you. Orange with arrow shows the direction from which you have been hit from primary armament, such as cannons and grenade launches. Red means that the enemy has launched his guided munition at you. Multiple arrows can be displayed simultaneously. They maintain the direction of the threat when the camera is rotated and can shift depending on the movement of the threat. If desired, the indicator elements can be disabled in the settings. Last but not least, change projectile markers. This marker is for AA missiles. This is for missile torpedoes. Those two, missiles and torpedoes that can be flared. The last two, missiles and torpedoes that cannot be flared, thus posing an imminent threat. Note that with the new update, ships and aviation receive new parameters. For ships and marine drones, it's viewing range, aerial, surface and underwater visibility, stealth if available, movement penalty and recon data. For aviation, it's viewing range, all types of visibility, stealth if available and recon data. For armament, it's penalty for firing. When utilizing the new visibility system, remember that your visibility depends on your actions. When forming certain builds, look at the size of firing penalties for weapons to better know your ship, fight wisely, and see you in the next episodes of How It Works. Hey, thanks for watching till the end. If you liked the new format, tell me in the comments what would you like to see in the future episodes of How It Works. Oh, and of course, special thanks to my subscriber, Lucas, for helping me make this video. Some of the footage was shot with his help. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful for someone. Thanks for watching and good luck in naval battles.